The bedroom door opened abruptly, startling each of the room's occupants. Adelaide Burns emerged, half-dressed with silken robe and sleeping mask pushed up over her short, curly bob. Her right hand held a cigarette as she massaged her pounding temples. She would be beautiful if the darkened circles below her eyes were not so prominent. It looked as though she had had a very long night indeed. So they had returned home after all. Mrs. McFarlane's rustling skirts met Harriet's mother where she stood, or rather, leaned. "Mrs. Burns, I did not realize you were at home," her voice lilted. "Here, let me help you. Might you like a cup of tea?" "Oh, no, Maggie. Not right now. I need to speak with you in the other room." She struggled to get the words out from the hazy fog in her head. Excessive partying had clearly gotten to her this time, but then this was not unusual. "Harriet, please keep it down. Whatever you're doing. It's giving me a headache." The door Adelaide was leaning on slowly started to inch away from her as it began to give from her weight. "Oh, dear." Mrs. McFarlane reached out to prevent her from falling to the ground and quickly ushered her out. Harriet and Flynn, obviously forgotten, watched as the door shut behind the two. Flynn collapsed onto the chair from holding his position for so long. Harriet giggled. "That was a close one." "Who was that with the red giant?" Harriet giggled again. "You mean Mrs. McFarlane. The woman with her was my mother." Her countenance changed a little bit, though barely noticeable. Flynn considered this a moment. "Milady's mother? Please excuse me, I do not mean to interfere, but is there something the matter with—" "Oh," Harriet replied offhandedly. "She's nearly always like that. At least it feels that way. She'll be fine after a good long bath and listening to her favorite radio dramas while she waits for her pin curls in her hair to set. Have you heard of any?" Pin curls? "No, soap operas, on the radio." Flynn's ears swayed as he shook his head. "Most of our music and stories come from fairies in the Emerald Glen back home, and the elements up north carry their song upon the wind." "Fairies!" Harriet sighed. "Oh, you really must tell me more about them and your home. You still need to tell me more about it, where you're from." "I live in a place both far and near to here, familiar yet unfamiliar. It is difficult to explain, but my world is called Stelrath, and I belong to the kingdom of Carmelia. I know it doesn't make sense now, but it will. Carmelia, such a beautiful name. I should like to go there one day." "Maybe you will. It takes a very special person to be able to see both worlds." Harriet glanced down, her eyes saddened. "Oh, then I suppose I shall never see it then. I'm not very special." "Don't ever say that." Flynn hopped up with determination. "You certainly are special. It's why I'm here. It's why I know I can trust you. But you will never raise your full potential if you don't even believe it yourself." Harriet wasn't so sure about Flynn's words, but she smiled and nodded anyway. "Believe. You must believe." "Okay, I believe." He smiled and nodded. That's all I needed to hear. His nose gave another involuntary twitch, a large bang and a snap, with curled hues of gold sparkled as the breeze blew the wisps of hair from around her face. Her heart felt light and free again. The room went out of focus, and a portal appeared where the window once sat. "What's happening?" She breathed. Even then, it was for naught, since there was no way anyone could have heard her over the unearthly sound roaring around them. It was like a mighty wind howling with sweet music intermixing at the same time, as if opposites were being united for a brief moment. There was a bright light with vibrant color shining through from the other side. Harriet's eyes widened in amazement. She had already given up on her rabbit dream theory, but these happenings, having any basis in reality at all, went against everything she ever believed in up until yesterday. Maybe she was just going crazy. She shook the thought and slapped her right cheek. "No, keep it together. Focus. You are not going crazy." Flynn's tiny left paw was extended, and his large green eyes coaxed her forward. "It's all right. There is no danger. You are quite safe." She could hear his words, in her head, even when his mouth didn't move. How was he doing that? There's a lot you don't know about me, he winked, and led her to the edge of the portal.